Olin laughed. So hard-headed for a student of the airy world. I owe it to my readers, Mike said blandly. I suppose I simply could have left 1408 as it is anyway during most of its days and nights. The hotel manager mused. Door locked, lights off, shades drawn to keep the sun from fading. The carpet, coverlet pulled up, doorknob, breakfast menu on the bed. But I can't bear to think of the... They're getting stuffy and old, like the air in an attic. Can't bear to think of the dust piling up until it's thick and fluffy. What does that make me? Persnickety or downright obsessive? It makes you a hotel manager, I suppose. In any case, V and C turned that room very quick, just in and out until C retired and V got her first big promotion. After that, I got other maids to do it in pairs, always. Picking ones who got on well with each other, hoping for that bond to withstand the bogies. Hoping for that bond, yes. And you can make fun of the room 1408 bogies as much as you want, Mr. Insulin, but you'll feel them almost at once, of that I'm confident. Whatever there is in that room, it's not shy. On many occasions, all that I could manage, I went with the maids to supervise them. He paused, the added, almost reluctantly, to pull them out, I suppose, if anything really awful started to happen. Nothing ever did. There were several who had weeping fits, one who had a laughing fit. I don't know why someone laughing out of control should be more frightening than someone sobbing, but it is, and a number who fainted. Nothing too terrible, however. I had time, enough over the years to make a few primitive experiments, beepers and cell phones and such, but nothing too terrible. Thank God. He paused again, then added in a queer, flat tone, one of them went blind. What? She went blind. Rami Van Gelder, that was. She was dusting the top of the television and all. At once she began to scream. I asked her what was wrong. She dropped her dust rag and put her hands over her eyes and screamed that she was blind, but that she could see the most awful colors. They went away almost as soon as I got her out through the door, and by the time I got her down the hallway to the elevator, her sight had begun to come back. You're telling me all this just to scare me, Mr. Olin, aren't you? To scare me off. Indeed, I am not. You know the history of the room, beginning with the suicide of its first occupant. Mike did. Kevin O'Malley, a sewing machine salesman, had taken his life on October 13, 1910, a leaper who had left a wife and 7 children behind. 5 men and 1 woman have jumped from that room's single window, Mr. Insulin. 3 women and 1 man have overdosed with pills in that room, 2 found in bed, 2 found in the bathroom, 1 in the tub, and 1 sitting slumped on the toilet. A man hanged himself in the closet. In 1970, Henry Storkin, Mike said. That one was probably accidental, erotic asphyxia, perhaps. There was also Randolph Hyde, who slit his wrists and then cut off his genitals for good measure while he was bleeding to death. That one was an erotic asphyxiation. The point is, Mr. Insulin, that if you can't be swayed from your intention by a record of 12 suicides in 68 years, I doubt if the gasps and fibrillations of a few chambermaids will stop you. Gasps and fibrillations, that's nice, Mike thought, and wondered if he could steal it for the book. Few of the pairs who have turned 1408 over the years care to go back more than a few times, Olin said, and finished his drink in a tidy little gulp. Except for the French twins. V and C, that's true. Olin nodded. Mike didn't care much about the maids and their, what had Olin called them? Their gasps and fibrillations. He did feel mildly rankled by Olin's enumeration of the suicides, as if Mike was so thick he had missed, not the fact of them, but their import. Except, really, there was no import. Both Abraham Lincoln and John Kennedy had vice presidents named Johnson, the names Lincoln and Kennedy had 7 letters. Both Lincoln and Kennedy had been elected in years ending in 60. What did all of these coincidences prove? Not a damn thing. The suicides will make a wonderful segment for my book, Mike said, but since the tape recorder is off, I can tell you they amount to what a statistician resource of mine calls the cluster. effect. Charles Dickens called it the potato effect, Olin said. I beg your pardon? When Jacob Marley's ghost first speaks to Scrooge, Scrooge tells him he could be nothing but a blob of mustard or a bit of underdone potato. Is that supposed to be funny? Mike asked, a trifle coldly. Nothing about this strikes me as funny, Mr. Inslin. Nothing at all. Listen very closely, please. V's sister, Celeste, died of a heart attack. At that point, she was suffering mid-stage. Alzheimer's, a disease which struck her very early in life. Yet her sister is fine and well, according to what you said earlier. An American success story, in fact, as you are yourself, Mr. Olin, from the look of you. Yet you've been in and out of room. 1408, how many times? 100, 200, for very short periods of time, Olin said. It's perhaps like entering a room filled with poison. Yes. If one holds one's breath, one may be all right. I see you don't like that comparison. You know, doubt find it overwrought, perhaps ridiculous. Yet I believe it's a good one. He steepled his fingers beneath his chin. It's also possible that some people react more quickly and more violently to whatever lives in that room, just as some people who go scuba diving are more prone to the bends than others. Over the Dolphin's near century of operation, the hotel staff has grown ever more aware that 1408 is a poison room. It has become part of the house history, Mr. Inslin. No one talks about it, just as no one mentions the fact that here, as in most hotels, the 14th floor is actually the 13th, but they know it. If all the facts and records pertaining to that room were available, they would tell an amazing story, one more uncomfortable than your readers might enjoy. I should guess, for example, that every hotel in New York has had its suicides, but I would be willing to wager my life that only in the Dolphin have there been a dozen of them in a single room. And leaving Celeste Romando aside, what about the natural deaths in 1408? The so-called natural deaths. How many have there been? The idea of so-called natural deaths in 1408 had never occurred to him. 30, Olin replied. 30 at least. 30 that I know of. You're lying. The words were out of his mouth before he could call them back. No, Mr. Inslin, I assure you I'm not. Did you really think that we keep that room empty just out of some vapid old wives' superstition or ridiculous New York tradition? The idea may be that every fine old hotel should have at least one unquiet spirit clanking around in the suite of invisible chains. Mike Inslin realized that just such an idea, not articulated but there, just the said indeed, been hanging around his new 10 Nights book. To hear Olin scoff at it in the irritated tones of a scientist scoffing at a Bruja-waving native did nothing to soothe his chagrin. We have our superstitions and traditions in the hotel trade, but we don't let them get in the way of our business, Mr. Inslin. There's an old saying in the Midwest where I broke into the business. There are no drafty rooms when the cattlemen are in town. If we have empties, we fill them. The only exception to that rule I have ever made, and the only talk like this I have ever had, is on account of room 1408, a room on the 13th floor whose very numerals add up to 13. Olin looked levelly at Mike Inslin. It is a room not only of suicides, but of strokes and heart attacks and epileptic seizures. One man who stayed in that room, this was in 1973, apparently drowned in a bowl of soup. You would undoubtedly call that ridiculous, but I spoke to the man who was head of hotel security at the time, and he saw the death certificate. The power of whatever inhabits that room seems to be less. Around midday, which is when the room turns always occur, and yet I know of several maids who have turned that room who now suffer for heart problems, emphysema, diabetes. There was a heating problem on that floor 3 years ago, and Mr. Neal, the head maintenance engineer at the time, had to go into several of the rooms to check the heating units. 1408 was one of them. He seemed fine then, both in the room and later on, but he died the following afternoon of a massive cerebral hemorrhage. Coincidence, Mike said. Yet he could not deny that Olin was good. Had the man been a camp Counselor, he would have scared 90% of the kiddies back home after the first round of campfire ghost stories. Coincidence? Olin repeated softly, not quite contemptuously. He held out the old-fashioned key on its old-fashioned brass paddle. How is your own heart, Mr. Insulin? Not to mention your blood pressure and psychological condition. Mike found it took an actual conscious effort to lift his hand, but once he got it moving, it was fine. It rose to the key without even the minutest trembling at the fingertips, so far as he could see. All fine, he said, grasping the worn brass paddle. Besides, I'm wearing my lucky Hawaiian. Sure. Olin insisted on accompanying Mike to the 14th floor in the elevator, and Mike did not demur. He was interested to see that once they were out of the manager's office and walking down the hall which led to the elevators, the man reverted to his less consequential self. He became once again poor Mr. Olin, the flunky who had fallen into the rider's clutches. A man in a tux, Mike guessed he was either the restaurant manager or the maitre d' stopped them, offered Olin a thin sheet of paper, and murmured to him in French. Olin murmured back, nodding, and quickly scribbled his signature on the sheet. The fellow in the bar was now playing Autumn in New York. From this distance, it had an echoey sound, like music heard in a dream. The man in the tuxedo said, "Merci bien," and went on his way. Mike and the hotel manager went on theirs. Olin again asked if he could carry Mike's little valise, and Mike again refused. In the elevator, Mike found his eyes drawn to the neat triple row of buttons. Everything was where it should have been. There were no gaps, and yet if you looked more closely, you saw that there was. The button marked 12 was followed by the one marked 14, as if Mike thought they could make the number non-existent by omitting it from the control panel of an elevator. Foolishness. And yet Olin was right. It was done all over the world. As the car rose, Mike said, "I'm curious about something. Why didn't you simply create a fictional resident for room 1408 if it scares you all as badly as you say it does? For that matter, Mr. Olin, why not declare it as your own residence? I suppose I was afraid I would be accused of fraud, if not by the people responsible for enforcing state and federal civil rights statutes. Hotel people feel about civil rights laws as many of your readers probably feel about clanking chains in the night, then by my bosses if they got wind of it. If I couldn't persuade you to stay out of 1408, I doubt that I would have had much more luck in convincing the Stanley Corporation's board of directors that I took a perfectly good room off the market because I was afraid that spooks caused the occasional traveling salesman to jump out the window and splatter himself all over 61st Street. Mike found this the most disturbing thing Olin had said yet, because he's not trying to convince me anymore, he thought. Whatever salesmanship powers he had in this office, maybe it's some vibe that comes up from the Persian rug. He loses it out here. Competency, yes, you could see that when he was signing the maitre d's chits, but not salesmanship, not personal magnetism, not out here. But he believes it. He believes it all. Above the door, the illuminated 12 went out and the 14 came on. The elevator stopped. The door slid open to reveal a perfectly ordinary hotel corridor with a red and gold carpet. Most definitely not a Persian, and electric fixtures that looked like 19th century gaslights.